Alright, we are finally pulling this project back out to continue working on this thing. I know in the last build video of this project, I did say that this vehicle is pretty much done and ready to paint, but nah, this thing needs a lot more work. We need to do a couple changes to this and add more stuff here and there to get it to work a little bit better before we can paint and finalize this project. We need to change the gearing. We need to fix the secondary transmission to where it stays in second gear. We need to replace the rear bearings and the rear hubs with other bearings. We need to fix the steering. We need to fix the shifter for the secondary transmission. Also we need to install limiting straps for the suspension, as well as a couple other things here and there to get this vehicle ready to paint and finalize. So, the first thing we should work on is fixing the rack and pinion on this project. Now, I took the winch off to mock up on the new project. Before we put the winch back on, let's fix the steering, because while at Durham Town, these two bolts holding the rack and pinion on kept loosening up, causing the steering to do that, which was a little sketchy going, you know, 60 plus miles an hour on the turbo track and GP track while you're steering is doing that. But we tightened it up like 4 times, but it kept loosening up on us. I was thinking about getting a different rack and pinion for this project, but I don't think it's I think the rack and pinion's fine. We just need a better way to mount it to the frame. Yeah, definitely a lot of force on these bolts. This one's even bent. Look at that. Wow. Working on tapping the last hole, and what does it have to do but break inside of there? So, yeah, that's gonna be fun getting out. Yeah, so basically I just made a couple axle locking collars or half shaft collars, whatever you want to call these things, that fit this rack and pinion. I made them out of steel so therefore I can weld the bottoms to the frame, and that's what's going to help hold the rack and pinion in place. I probably could have bought some of these super cheap from eBay or Amazon, but I was too lazy to wait for shipping, so I just decided to make them. And yes, I did end up having to make 3 of them, because one of the first ones that I made, I did end up breaking a tap on one of the holes, and I spent over an hour trying to get that tap out, and then I couldn't do it, and then got frustrated and just took a hammer to this thing. So I did end up having to make 3 of them. Yeah, that should definitely fix it. Fixed. Alright, so next thing is let's install the limiting straps that I bought for this. Now, I actually bought these before going to Durhamtown. I wish I installed them before going to Durhamtown, because I'll be honest, it was a little nerve-wracking jumping this thing as much as I was without having these on, and it's just hoping that these shocks are gonna pull themselves apart when every time I jump in the air and the suspension slams down or up, or however you look at it. But luckily the shocks survived. So, but let's install these anyways for future jumping. Took a lot of trial and error to get into the proper point, but I think I got it good to where these, because these actually stretch kind of a lot. Kind of surprising, but finally got it to the point where they grab and stop stretching once the shocks are almost all the way extended. Hopefully we're not going to have any issues when the suspension collapses all the way. Hopefully this won't get sucked up into the chain right here. That's hopefully we won't have any issues with that. Alright, so we got the limiting straps installed. Now the next thing we need to work on is we have a couple things that we need to do with the rear suspension and the rear drivetrain. We need to replace the bearings and the rear hubs because I don't like them. They make a mess. We need to change the gearing on this thing finally, as well as we need to play around and try to fix the secondary transmission on this project to try to get it to stay in second gear, which means we have to tear apart most of the rear suspension and rear end on this thing, but it shouldn't be that hard. I made it pretty easy to disassemble this thing. Alright, so we're going to be changing the gearing of this vehicle because right now the gearing seems to be perfect for places like Brown Mountain and Windrock, places where it's trails. You're not really wanting to go that fast because you need lower gearing to get up these steep rocky hills, all that kind of stuff. The gearing seems to be perfect for that, but for places like Durham Town, the gearing is just a little too low. That vehicle was just a little, it was geared down a little too much, and we need to be able to utilize more of the lower gears on the secondary transmission. I'll be honest, low range on that vehicle is pretty much useless unless I'm moving it around the yard and getting it on and off the trailer. That's pretty much the only time I ever use low range. When I was at Durham Town, I was pretty much in high range the entire time. And then when I took it to Brown Mountain, I was in medium range and high range. This is a sprocket on the jack shaft. This is a 33 tooth sprocket. We're going to be replacing it with a 22 tooth sprocket. You can see the size difference between the two. Now, I'm going to be leaving this one alone, so therefore, if worst case, we ever want to put the gearing back to what it was, we simply just put this back on the vehicle, and we're going to be making this hub fit on this sprocket. We do have to cut 2 more keyways on this hub, so therefore there's 4 keyways like how it is on this hub, and then we gotta bore the sprocket out, so therefore it'll fit on the hub, and then weld it all together. that is always super a pain to do, but it works. Oh, God. Ah, oh, man, this thing's heavy. Oh, oh man. Alright, now let's start working on the secondary transmission of this project. Now, like the problem we were having with the first secondary transmission of this project, it is still, unfortunately, popping out of second gear. Unfortunately. Now, for those who don't remember, the first secondary transmission we had in this project, it was from a super old, like 90-something-year-old car, and it kept popping out of second gear. I kept trying to grind it back into gear, and then when I took the transmission apart, found a bunch of metal shavings from grinding it back into gear, and then found out it's a super old transmission, super hard to find parts for it. That's why I replaced it with this, a T90 transmission that's a lot easier to find parts for, not necessarily newer, but new enough to where I can actually find parts for this transmission. And unfortunately, we're still having the same issue with this one. It's still popping out of second gear, and I think I know why. I found this out. I'm not sure if I've said this in a video, but I think I figured out why. I found out after building this frame, after putting the first secondary transmission in this thing and taking it for a couple test drives, and when it started popping out of second gear, I started researching, trying to figure out why is it doing that, how can I fix it, and then I noticed something, which honestly I'm not really sure why I didn't think of this when I first put this thing on, is I am running these secondary transmissions backwards. Not backwards as in the sense of input-output is switched, it's still, you know, that's correct. Backwards as in, this is the input of the engine of the Jeep goes here, and then the drive shaft goes in that direction. The engine of the Jeep turns this input clockwise, clockwise, and I am turning this counterclockwise. So I'm turning this in the opposite direction it's designed to run. I did a bunch of research trying to figure out, can I do that? Is that a bad thing? Do transmissions work when they're backwards? I couldn't find anything that really told me that you can do it or if you can't do it. There were some people that tried it and they didn't really say that if it worked or not, but so I've been basically just testing to see if it works by just doing it. So I'm pretty sure that is the reason why it is which makes me kind of wonder, if it's popping out of second gear, why is it staying in third gear? I'm happy it's staying in third gear, but why is it only popping out of second and not third? First is actually a gear that slides over and meshes with another gear, so it can't really pop out of gear because it's actually meshing with another gear. But second and third is synchros and meshing with teeth, and if second's popping out, why is third not anyway, I don't know. But I think I figured out how we can possibly get it to work by simply modifying a couple of things on the inside. And I'm not sure if this is going to work or if we're going to ruin the couple parts we're going to try to modify in this thing, but I got to try something. We have to try to get this thing fixed. And for those who are going to ask, well, can I just turn the transmission the other way and run it the other way? I can't do that. There's too many moving parts on this thing already. If I did do that, I would have to put a jack shaft over this thing, and there'd be another chain, more moving parts. I don't want to do that. That's way too complicated. So let's try to modify this thing to see if we can get this thing. Which unfortunately it does mean that we have to disassemble this thing yet again, which I don't really like, but I'm kind of getting good at it, I guess. Take this thing apart, take some of the gears out, and see if we can modify them to get this thing to work. Maybe I should have tried to loosen this thing before putting it on these sketchy bricks. So I don't know if I can hold this thing. Oh, there it goes. Ooh. Nope, nope, nope. I hate the smell of this stuff. It smells like fish. It smells like rotting fish. No metal shavings, so that's good. Alright, so this is second gear, and this is the sleeve synchro thing, whatever you want to call it, that engages third gear and second gear. This is what actually engages to engage second gear. Now, how I think I'm going to get this to work, because I've seen on high horsepower transmissions, racing transmissions, these teeth right here, or whatever you want to call them, they're actually beveled a little bit. Not by much, but maybe like 1 or 2, maybe 3 degrees. They're beveled to where on acceleration and deceleration it actually pulls this part into this part and holds it into place. So my idea is, because these are straight cut right here, I'm going to try and take some of these diamond burrs and on the acceleration side, cut just a little bevel on each one of these little teeth right here, and then do it on the same side, on this side, to where on acceleration it'll hopefully pull this part into this part and hopefully lock it into place. Now, either this is going to work or it's going to ruin these two parts, and I actually prepared for ruining these two parts by simply buying new ones on eBay. This was only like 30 bucks on eBay. This was like 35 bucks with $8 shipping. So in case I ruin these two parts, we do have new ones on the way. Alright, so pretty much spent the rest of the day yesterday grinding in the bevels on both of these parts. Now that was challenging. These are not, you know, soft material, and I went through a lot of bits, and that was a wrist killer, let me say. I also spent a couple hours using Sharpies to mark the high spots on each of these and grinding down the high spots, so there hopefully should be enough contact patch throughout the whole thing on both of these to hopefully work. And I can feel that it does kind of work. When I twist it this way, when it's under load, it is harder to pull apart, and I can feel that they are kind of pulling each other in when I twist it like that. So versus the side that I didn't grind, no matter how hard I twist it, you can simply just pull it apart like it's nothing. I'm now confident that this is going to work. I'm just not sure how long it's going to work. Did I weaken these parts by grinding off material on each side? Is it going to work for a little bit and then over time wear down again and then just, you know, go back to slipping out of second gear? Who knows? Who knows? But at least let's just reassemble this thing. Alright, so this is the shifter plate, the top plate of this transmission. Now, I'll be honest, the way that I have the shifter linkage and the shifter mechanism to shift this secondary transmission on this vehicle, it is not really that great because this is an H-pattern shifter, and because we have to shift it from the driver's position, I had to create that super complicated mechanism that it does work. It's just not really that great. It's really hard to find neutral, really hard to know what gear you're in. It's hard to find gears. So it does work, just doesn't really work that great. And I have an idea on how I could possibly modify this thing to where instead of its one shifter arm that's an H pattern, I can replace it with two shifter arms. One arm operates first and reverse. The other arm would operate second and third. That way I can redo the shifter mechanisms and all the linkage to be a lot better on this vehicle. And it's going to be a lot easier to find neutral, find what gear you're in, and all that kind of stuff. And I think, I've been looking at this, I think I can figure out how to possibly do this. So let's try it. Let's see if we can do this. There we go. There we go. Alright, so we modified this thing to have two shifters instead of just one. This was actually not that hard than I originally thought it was going to be. It was super easy to do this. So basically what I did is I got rid of the original H-pattern shifter and I installed 2 of them. Basically just drill a hole through here so there's a pivot point, and then made these little lever looking things. And basically one of them goes down and operates one of the shift forks, and the other one operates the other shift fork. So basically how this is gonna work is one of them operates first and reverse, then the other one operates second and third. That's gonna make it to where I can have 2 different sets of shift linkage, 2 different sets of shifters. That's gonna make it a whole lot easier to find gears, find neutral. It's gonna be easier to know what gear you're in just by looking at it. So this is hopefully gonna work a whole lot better than the original setup. Now, let's reinstall this back on the transmission, get some oil in this thing, and then put it back on the frame. Alright, so we got the transmission back in place. Now we still need to install the chains and all that kind of stuff, but unfortunately, I'm running out of time with this video. Because I upload once a week, I need to stay on a schedule of only working for so long on a video before I need to end it and work on the next video for Sunday. So we still have a lot more stuff we need to do to this. I was going to try and do all this in one video, but it's kind of taking a lot longer to do this stuff than I thought. So unfortunately we have to split it up into 2 videos. We still have a lot more stuff we need to do. Like we still need to finish installing the transmission. We need to cut apart the original shift linkage and replace it with our dual shifter shift linkage. Hopefully be a lot better and a lot simpler, a lot less moving parts, hopefully. We need to play around with the clutch, try to get that thing working a little bit better, as well as replace the bearings in the rear hubs. We need to reinstall the rear suspension, and I'm kind of thinking of adding more paneling in the back here and there. And there's a couple other things here and there to try and get this thing ready to finally paint and finish this project. It is well overdue. This frame's starting to get pretty rusty. So next video is finishing all this stuff, and then the video after that of this project will be finally painting this project. But for now, I gotta end this video here. Thank y'all for watching. I'll see ya in the next video.